There we go. Welcome, guys. It's gonna be PUBG Korea League week number 1, day number 1. I'm Toby, and I have for you here the first 4 matches that was played on Monday, the 11th of February. And we're gonna go over some of them, or actually all of them, and see exactly how things unfolded. Do they play things equally or similar to how we do in AU and NA? What do they play things differently? I mean, I watched the games, so I kind of know. But let's watch. There might be some things that you guys might not know or might not wouldn't have done the same way. So let's see. Maybe you can learn something from the Korean players, because they are actually pretty darn good at playing this game. So without waiting any further, let's jump straight in here to game number 1. The way that they're doing it in Korea is not like we're doing it in the NPL series. In NPL, it's 1 game of Miramar, then it's 2 games of Erangel, and then it's 1 game of Miramar. In Korea, it's 1 game of Miramar, and then 3 games of Erangel. Some might argue that's better, but that for sure is the case here. And also, they have 3 different groups playing against each other. So what you see on day 1 and day 2 and day 3 is not the same teams combined. The way that it's set up is that you have Group A, Group B, Group C. 8 teams in each, which means that in the Pro League in Korea, that's actually 24 teams rather than just 16. So Group A and Group B, 2 teams of 8, playing each other on day 1. On day 2, Group B and Group C. Could be wrong here, but you'll get the gist of what I'm trying to say. B and C, and then on the last day, it's going to be A and C. So which means that all teams will have the exact same amount of games played as they do in NPL, and as they will do in PEL as well, having 8 games per week played. They just have 1 more playing day, pretty much. But they all get to play, everyone, and yeah, that's pretty much what it is. And of course, if you guys are here on Twitch, you will be able to interact in the talk. We have questions asked as well, so please do please join on in anytime. Links everywhere and stuff. Fraz, what is my thoughts on the new point system? I wrote a pretty long tweet about it. I mean, it's okay if players like it. I think that it's a little too kill heavy. Maybe 15 points for a win would be better, but yeah. Anyway, you get how it is with the whole groups and point system as well. So without further ado, game number 1 of day number 1. Let's go straight into it. There you go. Plane is in the sky. There might be a lot of team names here that you guys might not know, and there might also be like, why is there 2 Entus teams, and why is there 2? I mean, in Korea, it's actually not allowed in Europe or in NA according to Pro League rules. But in the Korean Pro League, you are allowed to have at maximum 2 teams per organization. Just so you guys don't get confused by it, because you have 2 Ensus teams, Ensus Force and Ensus Ace. You have 2 Afrika Freaks teams. Those are the AFF and AFA teams up here. And then you have OP Gaming. They have both a Hunters team and they have a Rangers team. And I believe there's one more as well. Think. Oh yeah, Le Vega. They have 2 teams as well. So it hasn't really been an issue before, shouldn't be an issue now at all. But nonetheless, let's go into the game, shall we? Now that we have all that out of the way. Genji, they'll be looting up in Pochinki, is what I like to call this city that is not on this map. It's of course Picado. And you might know the name, might not know all the players. Esther you might know, and Loki you might also know from PGI Berlin, but they have had some scrub rounds. Circle now, going south. And this is where you would normally see teams wanting to go all the way around the coastline, all the way underneath on the coastline. And what you'll see over the course of these games is actually EU, I mean, it's a little different with NA, I think, but EU and Korea, they don't play that differently. China and Japan, they play very differently, but Korea, I mean, it's not that different. People are like, oh, the Asian scene, oh, they're so different with the point systems and TPP and all that stuff. But no, it's really not. There are some things that differ that we'll get into, but it's not that much of a difference. So let's fast forward it a little bit here. AFF goes up, or Style, I guess you could say, goes up by himself, trying to make his way in. You have Los Leones here, and normally what you would see is teams, I mean, we talk about this in the EU and NA scene all the time. Cities, yikes. Nope, nope, nope. Not gonna happen. You never ever want to go there. No, they're not playing. No. They're not playing. They're not playing TPP in Pro League. That was just. It was just me trying to be the average Western viewer of the Asian PUBG scene, asking all these questions. Yeah. There's no TPP in the Korean Pro League. But nonetheless, Circle's closing on in, and as you see here, VSG, the former. I mean, this is actually the guys from Actors Red. They won PAI, PUBG Asia Invitational, and they've just changed their name. I mean, it's still the same organization. I don't really get it. It's the same organization, but they changed the name because it's short for some homepage that the organization made, so it's for promotional use. I don't know, something like that. But nonetheless, they'll rotate all the way over the Southern Islands. Not something we see done very often. You'd normally see them rotate around around the southern side here instead, but they say, you know what, we'd rather play it safe. Only issue is that right now with La Vega up here, I mean, that could be an issue. You don't want to get, you rarely ever hear about bridge camping on Miramar. I mean, that it could be a thing though, but it looks like they are going to live with this scare as La Vega make their rotation on out just before they come up. And you can see here, nobody really wants to push into Los Leones. Only reason that MVP is having this very thin four-way split inside of Los Leones is because they landed and looted here. So they haven't really gone out of that looting phase yet. But you can see how many teams have already circled around here if you just take like the close proximity of the city. Which is smart because there's so many high ground positions that you can play from around the city where you can get a ton of vision and a really good position to put yourself in. I cannot write, but it's supposed to say program, and then you can get all the info there. But nonetheless, Circle is closing on in, and as we see here, a lot of teams concentrated. If we take like a circle around the city and then go west of there, a lot of teams over here. Of course, the majority of the circle is there, and you don't have any water on that side either. But the fact that nobody is sitting down here is actually a little surprising to me. We'll see though, coming into the later circles. We'll see if that's going to have any impact on anything. That was a bait, because it would. Okay, so circle 2. Oh, circle. Yeah, this circle goes hard east. And as you can see, there are a lot of teams. Again, if we draw this outline around Los Leones, it's kind of a big capital C, right? There are a lot of teams out here. They all have to figure out how they want to make their way pretty much over here. Because their main issue right now is you do not want to drive through the city. We can barely even see the city with all these vehicle logos and names. But you don't want to drive through the city when you have a circle like this. We could actually, you know what we could actually do? There you go. We can draw it up like this. Look at this circle. Now we don't see any of the teams. You have Los Leones. You don't want to drive through the city because people could be backstabbing you. I mean, there are just so many negatives by driving through a city that counters all the positives. Of course, sometimes you get yourself in a position where this is the only option we have left, and then you will do it. But more often than not, people would want to rather rotate far out in the blue than go through a city. So when you see a circle like this, if you're a team that's sitting anywhere out here, your immediate go-tos would be, let's get down to the southern shore, make our way in, and then try and push up from here. Same thing going from the northern side, trying to get in and push in. Maybe even go in here and try and see if we can settle for a compound in the center or something similar. But when we go back and look at how many teams are in this area, it's going to be up to all these teams to decide. I mean, we're talking La Vega, we're talking Kings Road here, and Africa Freaks. It's going to be up to them to either try and sit here and hold off anyone rotating through on either side and then rotate down themselves, or go further center immediately and then sort of try and push people out as the later circles come closing in. So let's see how things unfold. But of course, with nobody wanting to push through, we can just draw this line and see how many teams actually follow them. As you can see, nobody really wanting to go in and through the city. It's completely emptied out now with MVP leaving that area. So Juanita and the guys from, I want to call them Axis, but that's not the name anymore. From VSG, they make their way in on the southern side. Super smart rotation. They were really quick about it too. As soon as the circle popped, boom, let's just go south. Let's just get in there. It's a really smart play from them. La Vega, they decided to stay. Freak of Freaks, they went, well, just one compound further in. And Kings Road, they decided to stay up on the northern side as well. Not really allowing for, because that's why everything else becomes a cluster. With La Vega and Kings Road staying rather than going further center, that means that now the next teams that comes up, they have to either fight them, go around them, or do something else. But they have teams breathing down their neck as well. So all these teams sitting down here now, they're all dependent on the teams in front to kind of make their way in before they can move. And because they don't, that just becomes a big traffic jam outside of the circle. Here, Cesti has their two-way split. And now they all have to figure, how can we push either through or underneath them to get inside the circle? VSG kind of managed to make that push underneath because they did it extremely quickly. They rotated out immediately to get on inside the circle. But all these other teams never really reacted to the circle the same way that VSG did. Hunters far out in the blue rotation here. New circle pups. And south is where we go. And look at the reward, I guess you can say, that VSG gets now from going this far down south early on. We still have a lot of clump of... I mean, you can pretty much cut the circle in half and say, just like we did last on the NPL games earlier today, they have a half the circle to themselves right now, that is. Nobody's really doing this whole pushing underneath thing that we see done all the time in EU and NA. Now we have GRFW trying to make their way in. That's probably a better name than GRFW. Just me not quite remembering what the name is. I'm sure Patrick can help me with that. New circle pops. And here we go. So Genji, they're rotating very cautiously, very slowly, very steadily. And somehow, despite the fact that we had an Eastern hard shift, and this is what boggles me when we talk Korean PUBG as opposed to EU and NA. With the Eastern hard shift circle 2, centered up circle 3, and then this sort of Eastern one as well, we've only lost 2 players. I mean, in EU, we'll be down to 55 now, maybe, something similar. Just the GRFW team, and I could figure it out myself in a second anyway, but the fact that we only lost 2 players, these teams are very... I don't think they're scared of fighting. They just don't. I mean, they kind of respect having a neighbor, and... Oh, Griffin, yeah. They kind of respect having a neighbor and use the time, instead of trying to sit and poke each other, they use the time to scout. They use the time to sit and try and do reconnaissance and try and figure out where they can rotate, rather than sit in the 2 compounds next to each other and tap away at each other. Because you see this all the time in EU and NA, how if you're a team sitting in here and your team sitting down here, they'll be sitting and pew 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 shooting at each other all the time to try and damage vests, damage helmets, reduce the meds they have remaining, get those knock timers down. So like, so the more knocks you get on the person, you know, all that good stuff. Instead, what we see is these teams just not making room for each other, but not really fighting each other at all in the mid game, meaning that the late game just becomes a complete chaos, and we'll see that happening in, well, just a short while, because now, as you can see already, everyone's starting to fight each other, and we talked about this before. Griffin on the eastern side, VSG on the southern side, La Vega, they've taken the dip side down here, and I believe a team will come down and take the spot down here as well. Africa Freaks on the northern side, they're not allowing for anyone to go center. Of course, center is a rather open area that is kind of hard to play from, but all these teams that are out here, they're forced to play out on the edges and fight each other all over the place. Look at the kill counter now. We're at 62 players when this circle started, or when this circle got popped. Look now, Hunters, they full on commit to the push in. EM going right behind them, and this is where these fights do start to occur. On the southern side, we have 7 teams down here trying to make, well, halfway their way in, and another half is trying to sort of hold them off. Everyone now fighting each other. This is one circle push, and we went from 62 players down to 35. We just lost almost 30 players in one circle shrink. That's what happens when we don't get those pokes, when we don't get that damage done early on. Utter chaos. I think we had something like, I don't even know, 7 or 8 individual fights happening at the same time. Nobody wants to engage, nobody wants to engage, nobody wants to engage. Oh, we can third party this? Boom, let's go. And then 5 teams try to third party the same fight, and it just blows up. And, well, that's what we see right here. Down to 35 players off of 1 circle shift. That's absolutely insane. 27 players dead in 1 circle shrink. That is not something you see very often. Now the circle hard shifts north. That's, of course, extremely unfortunate for all the teams sitting down here. And let's see how they do manage to make that push around. Sug is all by himself. Afrika Freaks try to push on over the top to get control. That's a smart play by them. Pushing a bit further now. VSG, they pushed over the street. They actually did something smart, VSG, down here. So they're sitting in the compound. They see the circle shrink, and as soon as it pops, they're leaving again. It's the whole rotate when you have the time to. Don't wait for other teams to do their thing first. They did the same thing with the rotation around the southern side coming into, well, this compound that they had early on. And now they're leaving again. We do not need to take this fight now. Let's play it for the late game. And because they leave this early, get over here in a position where they can hold off everyone else, they managed to survive it. Because look at this, all these teams, they're fighting, and they're all taking so many casualties, and in the end, the only 1 player comes out of it alive. Instead, well, on the other side, we have VSG with still 3 players alive that they had just before as well. So really smart play. And then they would start fighting down here and get, I believe, Afrika Freaks kill them in this game, but nonetheless, a pretty interesting match there. Or pretty impressive or smart. It's just smart. It's something we see. I mean, the whole immediate rotations, we see that done in the EU and NA all the time. But in I don't know. I don't know what it is. They're just a little more cautious. A little more cautious with what they do, which could also be the reason that we don't see them fighting that much. Circle send us up. Still 3 players alive in Kings Road. Griffin, nice wide split here to take. Look at how much control they have of the circle right now. Full control of what's going on. Pushing on over together, get all the info they need. Now they might just be split a little too thin. Balua down here is all by himself. And this is the issue. Nelita was simply, you can see this, they have 3 guys over here trying to make an aggressive push. Nelita's job is to clear the top, but he allows for Kings Road to pretty much run straight through. Look at this. Juanita is sitting by himself, holding the north side and holding the top. And over the top comes Kings Road, and now he tries to make the flank around. But it's too late because his teammate's already dead. So doesn't work out the way that he wants to. And in the end, it's actually Kings Road that wins it. Even though it was a close one, because Nelita, I believe, he knocked both P-Bands and Crowrate. So Elka secures the win, and I believe he had something like 7 kills that game too. Really good job by him. But interesting first game, and already there, some things you can take away from the difference in playstyle. I mean, of course, it's only 1 game. It's there's a little more to it than just 1 game to analyze. I mean, you can't base what do you say, a playstyle of a whole region off of 1 game is what I'm trying to say. But there's still a lot to take away. Slower rotations, maybe more rotations, and less fighting. I mean, they'll fight really early, and then in the mid game, kind of just, I kind of want to say nothing happens as far as fighting. Because they all spend so much time rotating that they never really fight one another, causing that mid game chaos to erupt. We'll see if it happens the same way here in game number 2, because I'm pretty sure it does. So, plain as straightforward as can be. Everyone can go about their business however they want. Circle, somewhat southern, militaries included. Of course, far from guaranteed that it'll go down there. But teams can split out and loot however they want. So we see a split down here, pretty straightforward. Afrika Freaks, they've taken very early control of the hills. And then they have 2 guys in fair up here. Again, gotta get out, gotta get a lot of info. Sorry. Get a lot of info and get into positions where you can scout further forward and see what's clear. So they take a lot of control there. And also the way that Griffins are looting, I do not see this split very often. It's very thin. I mean, you could do this if you had the entire area for yourself, but they know for a fact that La Vega is around here. So looting this, spreading out this thin is, well, I mean, it's dangerous. That's for sure. The other Afrika team looting on down here. And then you have Kings Road all the way out in the east. So some places that aren't taken. Milta Power, Prim, Severny to a certain extent. Most teams. I actually believe the other La Vega team looted Severny. This is also kind of interesting because look at this. La Vega, they have 2 guys sitting in Yasnaya. Alpaca looting up here, and then they have Crank looting Severny by himself. Yet another split that, well, I mean, I cannot say that I've ever seen this before. What I think happened, though, because you see them parachuting down, I think Vino and Raining, they wanted to get vehicles, but Kings Road took them, and then they couldn't really get down to them, so they had to turn around mid-air and go for Yasnaya. But this 3-way split is not something I've ever seen before. Let me know if you guys have, in the chat or in the comments, if you've ever seen this 3-way split before, because I cannot say that I ever have. Maybe, I mean, just like League of Legends, just like other games, it's just a matter of time before the Koreans come in and dictate the metas and tell us how to play these games. So maybe that'll be the same way. 3-way split again, same thing for Fatal. They would go up and take the positions we saw before. So he just loots Barnes, boom, straight up, goes up. We gotta get control. Lambo, same thing, loots just here, straight up, gotta go up, gotta get control. Smart thing that he left because he had APK all. United kind of pushing up towards his compound. They probably saw him land there, and then they're like, you know what, let's push him together. But not quite the case. BSG, safe rotation around the side. Boom, circle goes south. Of course, military. Well, I mean, it's still in, but it won't go down there. Let's just put it that way. That's not gonna happen. But teams still have to take it into account that it could, right? So now we have limited a lot of the compound opportunities. We still have got Pachinki in game, but again, City, don't want to go there. And for the most part, the compounds that are in the circle are taken. Only issue is if you want to take the southern ones, you will have to swoop all the way around and come in from down here. Afrika Freaks, they'll be ganging up together, pushing out her Leklo and take double barns. And then, I mean, look at the transitions from these teams. We'll try and slow it down a little because you see everyone's rotating now, right? There you go. We'll slow it down a little. New circle pops. Boom. And immediately what you would think is teams over here want to come in from the west side. The only thing is when you're pushing in from the west, there's already only 2 places you can go. You can try and go down to the forest here and get info, or you can try and go up to the hill here and get info. And once those spots are already taken, because you cannot stop anywhere in the field, meaning that you pretty much just have to send it through, then you can go up to the side up here, or you can try and go up on the hills up on the other side. But those spots will most likely already be taken as well. So for the teams trying to rotate in from the rest, you really cannot stop driving before you either crash into the compound, try and sort of crash your way up to the Pachinki hill, or force a fight in 12 stacks, or yellow houses, whatever you want to call it down here. So that whole drive through the hills, unless if you want to go all the way around the southern side, you could even sit down on the gas station, but it's going to limit your, I mean, you won't really be able to scout, and you maybe scout up here, but that's going to be all. And should the next circle go somewhere up here, well, you're screwed. So for the teams trying to make their way in from the west, it's going to be extremely hard. Whereas on the eastern side, you have a billion compounds you can play around, or at least try to see if you can scout your way to. A lot of opportunities. I mean, there are a lot of places you can stop and try and scout your way forward into compounds. So it's much smarter, in this circle at least, to rotate in from the east than in the west. So when we see the guys in Gen G, for example, what they do here, they're sitting up here. When you see a circle like this, I would have 9 out of 10 times pushed east rather than gone west, as they do here. A lot of teams coming around the western side. here nonetheless, forced into these. Well, as you can see, nobody wants to drive through this. Nobody wants to go up here because they're expecting there's already be people. So now we have got 4.5 teams down on the southern side. Starlord swaps his vehicle, runs out, fights are forced in areas where, I mean, it's so far out on the edge, and now the third party comes in from a 2-man team trying to hold off all the people coming in. They're already going down. I mean, it's just, it's very, I don't know how to put it. It's just, it's yeah, it's unfortunate, I guess you can say. Circle does benefit them in the sense that it goes over to their direction, but now is when they have to move. We talked about VSG being a team that's always really early on their rotations. They've just fought off 2 different teams. They killed one, the other team got killed by, I believe, Ensis up in the compound. And now they have to figure, what do we want to do from here? They're kind of forced to stop, to heal up, to med up. And at this point, they have to say to themselves, okay, everything is taken. What can we do? We can push up here on foot. We can try and send it into the compound, but odds are that it's taken, so we'll have to sort of fight this compound team while teams are shooting at us from multiple directions. What can we really do here? And at the same time, on the other side, all these teams know that all these compounds around here have been taken years ago, like all these areas you can play from. So how do we want to go about it? If you're King's Road, do you want to try and go all the way around the northern side, force our way in? Do we want to hug the beach and try and see if we can make our way up and maybe force a fight up here? Or do we just want to kind of schematically say, okay, so we'll sit here until they move. When they go in, then we can take their spot. And then we can sort of just take whatever they give us and make our way in. That's how we see a lot of teams do in EU. If you're on the edge and you can't make any room, very few teams take those edge compound fights. They'll rather wait for a team to leave to then take their spot rather than crash into them and take the fight on the edge. Sure, if it's a center compound and you want to go for it, you'll see fights happening in those. But in a spot like this, very rare that you'll see an EU team and then or 2 EU teams fight each other for it. So you see King's Road stopping out here. Danawe goes down here to take the position. We just talked about it. I mean, it's kind of the combination of pushing on through and going on the beach. They do end up going up here anyway. It costs them a lot. I believe only 1 player gets out of there alive. And now the full crash comes in. So King's Road have 2 guys up here, 2 guys down here. I believe they get 1 knock onto one of their Freak of Freaks guys, and they commit to it. I like the decision. We don't see it happening a lot in the EU, but I like the decision. They're saying, you know what? There's only one way for us inside this circle, and that is to kill these guys. They're the ones holding us off right now. They are our gatekeepers. We need to deal with them. Boom. They go and fight them. And I can't really remember if they win it or not. It doesn't really matter either. Nope, they do actually lose quite hard. But they go for the fight. They take the fight, they know they have to, and they deal with it. Whereas opposed to in EU and NA, more often than not, what you'd see instead is a team all of a sudden sitting out here trying to sort of bounce around to find a new way to get inside the circle. And take a lot of blue, first of all, and in the end, most likely die because of it. But they committed to the decision. They tried. Unfortunately for them, it didn't really pan out the way that they wanted it to. And to me, the fact that this compound is still open is... It's one of those, it's gotta be taken, right? So we're not even gonna scout it. And then it's not taken. I mean, that's interesting. Circle has to go away from water. Makes perfect sense. This compound is still very much in. Nobody goes there for whatever reason. VSG doesn't even care to look down there. Cesti now comes up. And they've got to realize, wait. I mean, they must be looking down here, right? And they've got to say, guys, I don't think there's anyone in this compound. Midnight goes down while they're holding. Nobody's spotted. They stay up here. They hold the compound. Nope, it's clear. Let's go down there. Smarter plays to make. Smarter play to make, and they get a free compound off of it. So pretty smart in the end. Issue with this area is you have 2 compounds now, and then you have the hilltop. It's a kind of a plateau. I kind of want to say it's only up here really. Everything else is open hillside. You have some rolls, sure, there are a few trees. But other than that, it's very, very open and very hard to play around. So for all these teams on the northwestern side having to trying to make their way on in, majority of teams at this point has probably left their vehicles. And you're just gonna have to fight on foot. I mean, so where we talk about all this sneaky peeky smart rotation based playing from Korea, that's now kind of out the window because now these teams are forced to fight. I mean, you're reaching a point in the game at which you cannot not fight, if that makes any sense. You pretty much just have to go for whatever fights you can, because it's so open. You have nothing to hide behind. If you see someone, if he spots you, you cannot just run in your house, like run back behind your tree. You have to just stop and start shooting at him. And that's why we see so many teams out here on the edges starting to fall off, because they're forced into fighting each other. Somehow, Entis gets a circle up on that little shack. That's kind of interesting. Managed to hide 3 guys in that shack. I mean, they even drive 3 guys through the fields and get inside the shack to begin with. That's pretty impressive. And EM, having played this position from not very early, but somewhat earlier, able to stick around in this spot up the hill. Testy comes in, and I believe Entis actually up here on the northern side, because it's a very steep hill, and they don't want to push on up because they can't really get any vision up on anyone. So they're just prone. They play super passive, even though it's late game, even though there's still 4 guys alive. We've seen Tempo Storm when we just did the NA games earlier today. The way the Tempo Storm play is if we're in the late game and we're 4 guys alive, we'll go as a full team, we'll start clearing our flanks. We need to take control of the circle, we need to push around, but Ensis is saying, you know what, we don't have any vision. We sat, I don't remember if they were inside Yasnaya or inside the Pachinki, or if they were just up by the wizard here, but they have sat for 1.5 circles inside the shack without being able to get any info whatsoever. And now they're just saying, you know what, we don't have any info. It's too late for us to try and gain more. It's too risky. There could be teams anywhere because it's so open. They could just be proning like snakes pretty much everywhere. And we know there are still 16, well, I mean 14 or 12 other people alive in this game. So obviously we want to get some higher placements. So they just prone pretty much on top of each other. I believe 1 or 2 nades could have killed all of them. But nobody fighting. Nobody fighting now. Everybody wanting to get into that top spot with placements. I mean, the fact that you can have this sort of circle, 16 players alive. There's no solos. It's a 4-man team, 3, 3, 3. And nobody fighting each other. That's... You would never see that in EU or NA, let me put it that way. Teams would have tried to flank around, and when the thing is, Korean PUBG is so... That's why we saw those 30 people die in that previous game. It's so insanely third-person based. Or not third-party based. Very few Korean teams want to engage in fights where it's a coin flip who wins it. You always know, if you get a chance to third party, you have the upper hand. It's the mathematically better play to make. Yeah, I mean, it's very hilly here. I know. I mean, they're chilling in each their dip. I know. I'm just saying that in EU and NA, more teams would have tried to gain more info. I mean, they're very limited in what they can see and what they can play from, you know? The only teams that really have a split is Lash, but that's because he got caught behind a tree or something like that from one of the Afrika Freaks players when he tried to run around the side before. But instead of saying, we need to make more room, we have to play a little aggressive. They're just waiting, and look at what happens. As soon as a team starts fighting, they just come like, I don't know, sharks smelling blood when the third party opportunity comes in. So circle starts closing on in, and everyone's gonna start making their move. Now a little bit of shooting comes in, shots happening. EM down to just 1 player. Again, Entus, had this been EU, third party around would have been possible. I guess I actually have to take that back because they don't really third party. It's not this game then, it's another game I was thinking of. But nobody really third parties. It's just, I mean, and this, I guess this is where you can get a little suspicious, but I think it's just because of the curvature of the terrain. Entis and Entis, they never actually fight each other here. Could be because they don't really know that they're there. But you see the whole fight going on here. Kale somehow gets out of there alive. Now Sesti takes out the other team, and they push up and take out Kale as well. It's just very interesting to me that this many teams can be allowed to be alive, and I know that it's the hillside and everything, but that nobody plays more aggressive. It's very I don't know if the word is mathematical, but it's kind of a rather safe than rather safe than sorry, but rather play it safe and just rather defensive than aggressive, I guess you could say. That's pretty much how the playstyle was in that game, and you'll see that happening multiple times throughout these games. They'll do like it's just so rotation based, as opposed to other regions where they'll fight for it. They in majority of Korean games, they will not take a fight unless if they absolutely have to. Even though we say, oh, but it's a point, like kill heavy point system and all that stuff. That's not really the case. So, game number 3. Starting out. Circle, pretty much a repeat of the previous one. People getting looted up, splitting up. A lot of split looting this time around. They're looting 3 guys in yes, Naya and Vino goes down to what we call liquid compound, but of course, I'm sure that in Asia it has another name. Or in Korea, that is. It has another name. No, I know, Patrick, I know. It's not on purpose. It was just a fun coincidence. So everyone's rotating in. EM takes the east bridge. Sesti takes the west bridge. We have 2 teams fighting over this one compound already for whatever reason, and the team actually eliminated. I believe that's King's Road that gets eliminated real early on. They kind of both commit to the same compound for whatever reason. And even with Spear this far behind, they still do manage to take the fight and win it, I believe, without losing a single player. Look at that. Did you see Cleo? As soon as the fight happens, can I third party this? Can I third party this? Nope, you can't. And now EM comes up in between as well. So even though they play safe, I mean, it's just, if you get a chance to third party, whew, go for it. This time around, though, Circle not going south, goes north instead. Dynamo 3-way split. They have to consider if that's going to be worth it. Nope, it's not, at least for now. So they go into a 2-2 instead. A lot of teams coming up from the south now, and majority of them, as you can see, going on the eastern side. There will be teams rotating up on the west, but the thing is, Ensis has this compound here. They're kind of 2. Are they 3-1 splitting it? Nope. Seonyang, he goes over. No, he does stay. He does stay. And because there's not a whole lot to play from up and around here. You have there's a little like dip on the south side of the Rasa Kill, and of course you have the hillside itself, and a few rolls out here. But having to rotate out of there, if you get pinned down, then as soon as your vehicles come up over that hill, you have to accelerate uphill. Multiple teams with a chance to shoot at you. It's kind of a dangerous place to sit, especially early on. But surprising to me that no more teams are making their way into the oh, there you go. SSG is getting in there. So Circle pops. Boom. South. So we just saw a northern hard shift. Oh, not a hard shift, but somewhat hard shift north. Now it hard shifts back down south. So now, I mean, with this circle, even though it's only circle 3, honestly, you can pretty much say, you know what, we don't need vehicles anymore. It's forest, forest, forest. There's plenty. Normally, the only reason you need vehicles is 1, you have to travel far. 2, you're going into a place without any cover. So the vehicles can grant you that. Here, of course, if you're far out, you want to still have your vehicles. But honestly, once you get to the forest, like once you're, I don't know. I'm trying to draw and it's a fish. Once you're here, you don't really need your vehicles anymore because there's so many trees, and it's just, it's not gonna benefit you in any way to have vehicles on Potato Hill. That's, I mean, once the circles are where they are. So everyone's on the northern side. A Freak of Freaks sitting tight down on the southern side. La Vega, they're trying to make their way, and they do get the new compound, as some might call it. EM trying to make their way in from the west side. They're forced to take the fight, I believe, with APK. But again, everyone's safe rotations. Even though they're sitting close to each other, nobody's shooting unnecessarily. They'll get in a position and they'll play it safe and smart. But as you can see, nobody's shooting. Everyone's waiting. New circle pops. Boom. Dead center. Now, again, I mean, one thing is that we don't have any need for vehicles, meaning that we have to move on foot, but also that normally means that we have more fights happening. Because with people driving, that's, well, technically only one team shooting, if you know what I mean. If you're one team that catches another team in a rotation, then it's pretty much, not always, but for the majority of the time, only one team shooting at the other team rotating. Here, though, if you're rotating on foot, 4 teams fighting, easier to third party, and well, more fights tend to escalate off of those sort of things. So with this circle, 1 compound, 2 it's not even a compound. The yellow, 2 yellow houses here, 2 yellow houses here, and then you have the edge of the tri-compound down here. No, Blemis, I haven't. I'll do that after we're done with these games. So Afrika Freaks sitting tight on the southern side. Keep that in mind. They've sat here for a while. They've gotten a ton of info. I mean, when they don't get info, that's actually a lot of info to get as well. The fact that they've sat down here, they have, look at how much room, a big perimeter they have made for themselves. NN is sitting up here. He can sort of turret and shoot towards everyone out here. Style is sitting up in the wizard. He can shoot up here as well. Shadow can hold the entire southern side clear. And they sort of just, they have this buffer zone around them where nobody, they can come in, but if they're there, then they will know that they're coming in there. Keep that in mind. Because all these teams, they're trying to fight their way in, right? They're trying to get up and inside by a potato. They're trying to run up here in the open, get down to the forest lines. Everyone's fighting up by the compound. Afrika Freaks, they come up, they want a third party, but then realize, oh my god, another team. Because as soon as they saw Cesti and VSG start fighting, oh, that's when they wanted a third party. But then all of a sudden, they see Hunters in the kill feed as well, and they're like, whoop, nope, 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 that's going to be too chaotic, that's too messy, let's fall back, let's not engage in that at all. And also, they get the circle down towards them. So all the info they had before, they still have just exactly the same. Now all these teams are trying to fight their way in from the north, and this becomes a cluster. A big, big cluster, because Genji pushes in on AFA. At least they want to. But another team comes in first, and then they're like, oh, you know what? Let's just wait outside, actually. Let's not push in on this, because Danawa makes the push before them. I'm not even sure if Danawa spots Genji. But Genji, they're about to commit to the compound push. And then Danawa pushes in. And Genji says, you know what? I am smelling third-party opportunity. So they stay out instead. And then they wait for it. Wait for it. Wait for it. The push comes in from Danawa. And then they would commit to the push as well. But in the meantime, as we see from the southern side, La Vega, I think there was a drop up here, actually. I think there was a drop up here. And La Vega, they just take the vehicles up, go up on the northern side, and with them hearing all... Because now Genji pushes in on it. Such a smart timing. Oops, sorry. There we go. La Vega, push in. As soon as they commit to the building themselves, there's 1 knock, that's 2 knocks. Boom! Look at the full-on commitment from Genji. Push in, sweep everyone, boom, there you go. Full team wipe. They hold it, they hold it, they hold it, they wait for it. And because of this, because they play, like, because so many teams fight around the northern side, look at the amount of room all of a sudden that Afrika Freaks get to work with. Cleo gets spotted, he gets knocked out. Afrika Freaks, they've had this position down here for so long that they know for a fact there's no one down here. There's only 13 players alive now. Only 13 players alive. And the Afrika Freaks have the entire bottom half of the circle to themselves. Circle goes north now. And the only thing Afrika Freaks you would think can really do here is to push on up. That would be the smarter play. This is like an uphill position. So you'd want to expect them to push up towards... because, I mean, this is where the distance to the circle is closer or shorter. You wouldn't expect them to push them out this way. Same thing going here. You would expect La Vega to push on over this way. But there's a compound here that makes it a little hard to push. Or maybe just push on in here. Not expecting them to go down here. Hunters, they have the high ground position. They would just want to stay up here, right? That's what we think, but that's wrong. So they actually decided to go in this way instead. La Vega takes this spot. Pio stays uphill for the high ground position. Genji is kind of trapped inside now. That's why Sexy Pig and Suck, they sit up here to sort of hold them off. But now the thing becomes for hunters. What you have two options here. Do you want to sit with the high ground position and hold off Gen G? Because I mean they will have to leave here at some point, right? But with them staying up here and trying to hold off these guys, that allows potentially for La Vega to push in and take a position underneath them where they can sit and, well, where they'll be gatekept from. Same thing with AFF. I mean, the more time hunters spend outside the circle, the more room they give for these two teams to get in and then split out. Same thing here. Get in and then take circle control, because that's essentially what you want to do, especially when you have a 3 or 4 man team alive, right? So they try to overcommit, or they try to commit to the hold on Gen G. And Gen G actually is allowed to, I mean, they throw a billion smokes out. They try to make the runoff, and they run straight into La Vega, I believe. And Rush is nobody really fighting, just a few shots happening here and there. And then all of a sudden, with the circle closing in, that sender, Gen G try to comes in the third party, not gonna happen. And then all of a sudden, I believe, I mean, through all this chaos, it comes down to a 1v1. We can't really see smokes and stuff on the on this tool, but it comes very, very clustered in the end, and interesting for sure. It's a little tough to break down fights with this. It's more of an overall rotation analysis tool, I guess you can say. But what I think is extremely interesting, and you mentioned it kind of there yourself as well, Patrick, how the Korean PUBG is so much more about rotations. It's about what's mathematically the smarter play to do. And it's kind of funny because people do like the whole Korean math joke with League of Legends and different things, right? But it's true. They play the smarter play. It's not always that the smarter play technically is the better play, but they do what's supposed to be the best play. Let me get this question real quick. As a caster and analyzer, how did the strategies change from version 3 to version 4 settings? In my opinion, me and my team are still trying to figure out how we can adapt to get more kill points. Well, I mean, these aren't the complete V4 settings. They're similar, but not the exact same. So you don't have the same amount of loot and stuff as you do. But I know what you mean. I know what you mean. So early game has been shortened down a little, which means that to me is probably the biggest change, really. That they've shortened down the early game part of. I mean, it makes it, you have to sort of give up rotations more because you don't have that much time. Before, you used to have a ton of time in the early game to do all these different kinds of rotations, and you don't really have the same opportunity to. I mean, you can rotate far, you just have to come up with the decision earlier. So the changes to me, one of the biggest things I think is that it forces you to decide faster. That makes sense. You have to be quicker in your decision making. Pretty much across the entire map, actually. Or across the entire game, I guess you could say. That's probably the biggest change. I mean, now you can loot 3 buildings where you before had to loot 6, and then you start rotating. But that means that you have to have your plan decided by that 3rd building rather than looting for that much longer. So yeah, all in all, I think that's one of the biggest differences. So, nonetheless, game number 4, last game of the day here. Let's see. Circle. Da 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 da. Not guaranteed, somewhat guaranteed. Military is where we're headed. And Cesti, of course, would like this. They're military team themselves. But for all these other teams that are looting around the northern side, not quite the case. So let's see how things do turn out as all these teams try to make their way down. MVP going down to loot Milta. Boats coming in to play. Esther and company, they're jumping in the water and swimming across. Okay, this is not something you would ever see you would see it, but rarely, very rarely in EU that the players would opt for to swim. It's simply too dangerous. There could be other teams pulling up here trying to third party. There could be teams already on the other side. What you normally always see is if you don't get boats, I mean, teams going around the sides, that's one thing, and then up for the bridges, or if you want to swim across, do it. You just don't really see people swimming across, really. I guess, I mean, you see Maxor, he came down here to get a boat, but APK took 2 of them, and I guess they didn't want to rotate even further over to get boats. But even, I mean, even more so, the fact that they see APK go across should be the giveaway for them to not try and swim over. So that's probably the first takeaway. It's not something you see done very very often, but normally, I mean, when you talk about these things, it's the same thing as when you have a solo remaining and he runs around in the open and you're like, oh, what are you doing? Nobody would ever go there. Because he goes there, nobody's looking for him, you know? I mean, nobody's looking in the place where nobody would ever go. That makes pretty good sense. So it looks like they do manage to get over, at least for the to begin with. Teams go on the southern side. La Vega goes southern side. AFA goes down here, and Entus goes down here as well. Entus Force make their way on over. Oop, full on committed to the building. Just a little detour. And now Ace comes down here as well, running underneath. They probably hurt the vehicles up here. And do we still have teams on the northern side? No, we don't. So no super duper duper late rotations for anyone. VSG, they are coming in a little late, but it's, I mean, it's only circle 2, so it's not really the biggest issue. Holy moly, these circles, they really want to go south. 50% water, if not even more. And we have 57 players alive. I mean, believe me, by the end of the circle, we'll be down to something like, I don't even know, 40 maybe? There's simply not room for everyone here. I mean, there really isn't. All these teams trying to make their way in, first of all, either they have to drive through military base, try and drive around up the hills, but then La Vega will be waiting for them, or try and plow it through in the open fields out here, or like take a rogue dip-ish position up in the mountains, and it's not going to be a very, very safe play for, well, any of them. What I'm trying to say is there aren't really any safe plays that you can make from up here. 49 alive, 47, 46. Now circle, of course, it has to shift away from water. We all know that. So La Vega sitting dead center. It's always fun with these military circles. I mean, it's just, it's one of those chaos things where, especially when it's shown this early, I mean, it's just, and then when you have 2 south shifts in a row, it takes away all the compounds. I mean, you only really have this, you only really have this compound remaining to play from, and that being so far out, it's not really a spot you want to be stuck in. As you can see, P-Bands and Elka, they're sitting up on the high ground up here instead, trying to hold off anyone to the compound. Smart position, actually. Crowate's trying to look down, probably by the water, to make sure nobody's coming in. And he can also hold the entire eastern side down here. So they pretty much got this entire area locked down to themselves. La Vega kind of doing the same thing with the forest. And then you have Ensis, because there's a somewhat open area here that Ensis can keep clear. But everything up here is just chaos, because you cannot really rotate safely out and around from here. You can see, I mean, there's pretty much 1 team per bunker, and then you have ACC with the hunters in it. You can crawl alongside here, but that's like a last resort play that you never want to do unless if there's 3 players alive. There's nothing left in the circle you can really play from. You could have 1 team sitting down here, but Quarit would see it, and that would force Elka and P-Bands out here and help. You could have a team sitting down here, but all these teams would see it. That's going to be horrible. You could try and play around the shack up here, but all these teams will see you. That's going to be horrible. You can only really play the shack, I was going to say, if you have the bunker as well, and that's what EM is doing. Actually, pretty smart split from them. But no matter where you go in this circle now, a team will spot you. I mean, you will be visible to at least, I kind of want to say 2 teams no matter where you go in this circle. 1 or 2 teams at least. So for the teams that are in, stick around, hold up everyone else. Just try and push them out into the other teams. And for everyone else, good luck trying to make your way in, because you're not only trying to fight the teams that are in the circle, you're also kind of sort of running with your elbows, trying to poke away all the other teams that are outside the circle. It's not an easy rotation for anyone really to make on in from here. So AFA try to crawl their way in. They have a bit of a rich lineup here they can play around. La Vega lost one player, and that forces them to go from being aggressive to super defensive. Hunters now trying to make the push on over to the silos, not working out for them as expected. Geekan does manage to make his way across, but you can't really do a whole lot more than that from there. Ensis, they decide to push up. Ensis Ace going underneath. Mickey out in the blue trying to hold off, and this is exactly what Kings Road wanted. So they have one guy staying in the compound. He tries to run out, and he gets the uphill position. They just need all the info, and then as Elka and P-Bands scare off the guys in the Freaka, they can now turn around, focus down here, because score rate goes down. It's actually, I don't know if it's a misplay that he gets finished off, but I think Elka or Hyunkyung, or whatever his name is, should have been able to at least push, force Mickey back that he couldn't get the flush. But he does get it, goes down immediately after. And now we have this circle where, the road pretty much calls it, right? You have a huge downhill slant from the hillside in towards the bunk area. So whichever teams have to go to the other side of this line are most likely dead. Oh, okay, makes sense. Yeah, they were on the top, so they couldn't see him. Makes sense. So the circle goes south. Genji, good luck. EM, you do have Lash down here, so if you can get down here somehow, you might be able to push up and over. The only thing is, the only place you can really get up safely is down here. And if I'm Entus, you know that Xiao Yang has, he can hear their footsteps, so he knows that they're close. La Vega, they've probably been shooting from in here as well. So if I was them, back off, get back out here, because you know that people will be coming from here. This is like the only entry point to the circle, unless if you want to sit and hug. One team can sit down here, because that'll be the last team that comes across, right? Or the only one team to survive that. But Ensis engages in the fight instead. A little contradicting to what when we talk about like them doing the smarter play and all. So they go down because of it. Now all these teams have to fight Drave. Of course, solo player is just gonna hide it out. And a Freak of Freaks now, as we talked about, there's only room for one team down here. There's one team down here, and that's gonna be the team that won the northern fight. And right now, at least, yep, it seems like it's a Freak of Freaks. There's only one place you can get up. That's gonna be around the side, and that's gonna be how Freak of Freaks has to play it. Shadow, not across the road yet. At this point, Kings Road, they should all be up here. They should all be up here trying to take control. They hear these teams fighting. They might know that Drave is down here, but Drave is not going to engage because he's a solo player. So send Elka immediately up to help out Kian, and then have this guy up here but look south. So have one, and a player here that backs them up but looks behind them. There you go. Okay, so the decision did come in just 5 seconds later than I thought it was gonna go. So they start fighting each other. Elka goes down. Brave is still on the other side. Probably has a push chill in. Tries to push over. Kian tries to reposition his vehicle. Oh, Drave, what you gonna do here? Are you gonna third party the hell out of these guys? Or snake the hell out of them? Oh, there you go. Spots him, takes him out. And a Freak of Freak, look at the split. They have NN up on the side. They can flank around the other side. 2 guys pushing in. So even if he gets their attention, they have to be in a spot now where they can immediately retaliate. They have to be able to trade this extremely well. Same thing going the other way. If the guys from Kings Road spot out Lampu and Shadow, NN has to be there to flank. That's, it's a win-win for Freak of Freaks. There's pretty much no way it can go wrong, and it doesn't. It almost did, but unfortunately not quite the case for them. So Freak of Freaks gets 2 wins in, I believe, the final 2 games. Right? Yeah, the Forest and the and Military. Really impressive, actually. But funny to me to see these military rotations, because Interstate loot up down here. They see the military game, they go down there. Considering how far north VSG is, and the fact that they actually make it down to the bridge and across by the time that they get down there. Yeah, I mean, yeah. Kings Road should have killed Afrika freaks way earlier. Yeah, I agree. They should have won that fight much earlier. They should, I mean, that's what I said. They should have pushed up and taken the control before that third party came in. Because then them and the 2 remaining players from EM could have taken them out. There's no way Drafe would ever have engaged in that anyway. So I agree. But looking at the rotations, barely... does anyone take the East Bridge? Let me just fast forward it a little. Does anyone take the East Bridge after MVP? Do they go bridge or do they take boats? No, they fight there. Because they're forced into fighting, and then one... Okay, so one team on the Eastern Bridge. One team goes to East Bridge. How many teams goes West Bridge? Cesti doesn't count because they loot military anyway. So Afrika Freaks, they'll take the bridge. 1. Ensis, do they go over? Probably do. 2, 3, and VSG comes over in the end. 4. So 5 teams take bridges. There are 2 teams looting military to begin with, I believe. Yeah, EM and Cesti, they loot military. So the remaining 9 teams take boats or swim. 1 team boat. Boat. And it's kind of ironic, right? Because MVP, look at this. MVP, they're looting military, but they never get boat control. They do end up taking the boats in the end. But the fact that they allow for La Vega to push underneath them and steal 2 boats, that's surprising to me. Because all of a sudden, MVP doesn't have any boats left. There's a boat, I think, out here. Yeah, it's down there. Spear has the boat, you can see on the logo. But the fact that they allow for them to push around, there should be, I mean, when you have this circle, there should be a guy sitting on the southern side controlling the boats. Either you take boats and you go over, or you take the bridge and you don't allow for teams to drive over. Which is kind of what they do in the end. But the fact that La Vega is allowed to push you around and take those boats is very surprising to me. But nonetheless, guys, that was week 1, day 1 of... PUBG Korea League. If you like what we're doing or what I'm doing with this, I mean, this was a little, I don't have a lot of insights to these teams. I mean, when we're talking EU and NA teams, I can go in depth with, oh, this player likes to do this and that. I don't have the same knowledge of the Korean teams. I hope that by watching a lot of this, by following the entire season, I will get more of that knowledge because I really like the Korean scene. I will hope to be able to do the same with the Chinese scene as well once that gets started. But already now, I feel like there are some differences in the playstyles of the Korean scene, the European, and the NA scene. It's very interesting, and once we get further into the seasons, once PEL gets started as well, I'll try and do some comparisons with all 3 of them to, to put them up again, not against necessarily one another, but just to try and compare some of the leagues and how things unfold differently in similar situations. So thank you so much for watching along. I hope you liked the content. If you do let me know. And if you have any feedback, please do let me know as well, because, well, that's what it's all about, right? So thank you so much for watching the video, and until next time.